Good evening, everyone. I think we'll go ahead and get started tonight. There might still be a few people that trickle in, but thank you, everyone, for coming out tonight. You've packed the house. This is more people by far than we had at our city council meeting last night, so hopefully a little bit more exciting topic for everyone, too. But my name is Ryan Moffett. I'm the Community and Economic Development Director for West Des Moines. I'm joined by several department heads for the city here that are subject matter experts in their certain areas of expertise. So we'll just go ahead and start off with some introductions, and then we'll get things kicked off tonight. So go ahead, Bryce.
I'm Bryce Johnson, Business Development Coordinator. I had the pleasure of meeting some of your board members. I think it was last month or so. Glad to be here. Let me know if you have any questions. My business cards are over there on the table. Feel free to contact me with any questions.
I'm Linda Schimmel. I'm the Planning Administrator for the city. So anything that to do with planning, zoning, or even building questions, I can go ahead and field.
Hi there, Christina Murphy. I'm the General Manager at West Des Moines Water Works. And so we handle all the drinking water for the city, and we'll be here to kind of present a little bit about West Des Moines Water Works and what opportunities there are with us.
I'm Mike Witzel. I'm the Fire Marshal for the city. Any questions that you have on any fire code related items or emergency response for fire and EMS, I'll be the one who can answer that.
I'm Brian Hemstead. I'm the city engineer. I've met some of you in the past and under probably not the greatest terms of Joe Matt Stewart through Fox Creek, so I apologize in advance. It's been a while, but we have a few things that we'd like to talk to you about infrastructure in my part of the presentation. So good to see you all.
So, yeah, we're here tonight to really just do an informational presentation about the city's desire to annex the Fox Creek neighborhood and the surrounding area into the city of West Des Moines. So just a little bit of general housekeeping items. This is kind of come and go. So restrooms right outside the door if you'd like. There's a drinking fountain out there. I know we're holding this during the dinner hour, so to hold everyone off a little bit, we've got some light refreshments and water in the back as well. So we are going to try to get through this informational presentation as quickly as we can. So we would ask that if you can hold off on your questions until the very end of the presentation. We'll certainly have some time for Q&A, and I think most of us will try to stick around a little bit afterwards too if you want to chat with us for a little bit after the presentation as well. So a little bit about what we're going to cover tonight. We'll have just an overview again. We'll show some maps of the area that the city would desire to annex. We'll talk a little bit about why the city desires to annex the area. And then we'll have each of our speakers kind of go through and talk about things like tax abatement that we're willing to offer for residents that come in. Certainly, there's a big chunk of the presentation that's geared towards the water discussion. And then, as Brian pointed out, discussion on infrastructure and sewer connectivity, emergency response, and then any other kind of, you're here from planning to talk about, I guess, the zoning aspect of things when properties come into the city. I know we've received a lot of questions about grandfather rights as well, so we'll be prepared to tackle that with you as well. So, a few more pointers tonight. There's really no decisions being made. This is entirely informational at this time, just to convey what we've been working on with everyone and have a good Q&A and dialogue for everybody here tonight. If we're in a position where annexation would move forward, certainly we're required under law, and we'd be doing this anyway, to notify everyone by mail, essentially, of the intent for annexation. There's a decision that would go to city council and then ultimately a city development board before anything would ever take effect. So we're just having a nice discussion tonight and conveying information. I will point out too that we are recording this on YouTube. So if you enjoy this presentation so much and you want to go back and revisit it later, if there's anyone that can't make it tonight, I know it's busy vacation season too, we'll record this and make that available to go back and watch again. So I'm going to start out, I know that map's a little bit hard to read with all the hashing that's up there, but this is the area that the city wishes to annex. So the blue hashed area. Got some streets that we put on there just to give some reference. I-80 on the north, Ute Avenue or the Rube Steakhouse exit on the west, Millcedic Parkway, obviously everyone knows where that's at. That's kind of towards the middle of this area here. So it encompasses not just Fox Creek and Sugar Creek Hills, but it also takes in a lot of the kind of agricultural used property today. That's a little bit further west. So a couple of things to point out. This whole area encompasses a little over 1,300 acres. We have annexation agreement with the city of Waukee. So that Ute Avenue Road, basically on the west side of that, that's the city of Waukee's to annex into the future. Some of the areas already been annexed in Waukee currently. Everything east of Ute Avenue would be the city of West Des Moines to annex in. So that agreement's good until 2031. And that was locked in just a couple years ago, so it was about a 10-year agreement basically by the time it expires. Couple things just about annexation. Really, there's two types of annexation that's available out there, and some of this might have been hit on when my predecessor Clyde Evans talked with the homeowners association last spring. But there's a voluntary annexation, which is basically when all property owners consent. That's the cleanest, easiest way from our perspective to get property annexed in the city. Also in that voluntary annexation is a separate subcategory called an 80-20 annexation. And again, what that basically means is that if you have 80% of the property owners by area that consent to the annexation, the other 20%, if they don't consent, an annexation can still move forward under state law. And then the third option is one that we don't really have a big track record on here in West Des Moines, but it is something that state code does allow, is an involuntary annexation, which basically requires a referendum. So it's basically the, voting population of West Des Moines versus the people that would be annexed, into the city. So that's something, to my knowledge, in modern times, West Des Moines probably never done. Hopefully we wouldn't have to ever get there, but I just wanted to outline kind of what the options are for annexation. This is just another map of the area that shows, we broke this out, the color coding that's up there breaks this down by the size of property. So as you'll see, most of the homeowners within the homeowners associations there, smaller properties. We've been in discussions with a lot of these larger property owners, some of which have development intentions about annexation. And that's kind of a good segue to talk a little bit about why we're wanting to annex. And really what got this started off is, at this point, we've got 3 inquiries for development in areas that would be annexed in. So got a couple of bullet points that are showing up there about some of the early folks that have approached us about wanting to annex. We've kind of been holding them off a little bit because, just to level with you, from when we talk about the 80-20 annexation, having them consent and having all this come in at one point is beneficial from our goal, which is, to bring this area within the city. So it's a tough thing to do to kind of hold back development, but that's what we've asked these folks to do for the interim, is slow things down a little bit until we can really kick the tires on this and see if we can get to the point where there's support for annexation. So that's the biggest driver when we talk about the reason why this. I know there was some insinuation that this is a money grab by the city. That really isn't true. Our real hope in this is we want to cohesively develop the area that's really west of Fox Creek. And we've done a lot of planning work in this area too. I mean, all of our master plans for land use, for transportation planning, we have planned basically to grow into that area up to that Ute Avenue exit. And so, we think we can demonstrate that as development happens, we're able to serve these areas with infrastructure, water, sewers, things of that nature. So the other thing too, the Napa Valley Homeowners Association has approached us. Obviously, they're members of the Fox Creek Benefited Water District. They have really strong concerns about the state of the water system, and I'll defer to Christina on a lot of the discussion, the specifics of the study that was concluded last year. But that's something that's been a little bit of pressure on our end too, is they would desire to have a different water system, I think, over the long term. One other thing that I'll point out too, I think probably most people are aware of, but under state law, we can't create an island of property that remains in unincorporated Dallas County and annex everything west of there. And so that really is another reason why, again, it's not just to get more residents in the city and more tax base to take in Fox Creek. It's that, if we want this development land west of there that we've planned on taking in for some time, we just can't leave this pocket out there that's not incorporated in the city. So we want to have cohesive, defensible municipal boundaries that aren't gerrymandered and don't make any sense. So, and then last thing I'll point out too is I draw a lot of comparisons with Fox Creek and another area that the city had annexed in on South 60th Street, just north of Grand Avenue. That's called the Pheasant Ridge subdivision. Really homes of the same vintage that were built in the 70s and 80s. You've got, public streets with no curb and gutter, a lot of properties that were on septic. They are on West Des Moines water, so that was one thing that we did serve them with. But I'd urge you guys to all, go down and look at this. I don't know when that was annexed into the city, but it's been some decades, I think, that's come in now.
It was, I think, early 2000s. It was around the time of Jordan Creek Town Center and some of that development on there.
And I think you'll see that the character of that area really hasn't changed. I mean, there's still, kind of rural estates and acreages out there, very similar development pattern to Fox Creek.
And I think they came in because their water system failed.
So these bullet points here are really just a recap of what we talked about, just with the fact that we've got the development land that we want to move into, that we're poised to serve as development happens. We've got the agreement with Waukee in place, that, you know, there's not kind of a fight between the cities of a land grab in this area. We talked about the boundaries making sense, and really for our purposes, you know, residential properties don't do a whole lot for us from a property tax perspective. Certainly it helps. I'm not gonna deny that there isn't some benefit to the city from that perspective, but compared to commercial valuation, that's really not the big motivator from the city's perspective here. So I wanna talk to you a little bit about tax abatement, and this is one concession that, we're gonna offer you, from when basically Clyde met with everyone, with the homeowners association last spring. So before there was discussion of a 5-year sliding scale schedule, we've gotten the approval from our powers that be to offer a 10-year declining schedule, which is the most that's allowed under state code. So this would apply just to the city portion of your property tax levy. And that schedule, this is just a snippet right out of the state code, basically, that breaks down what the percentage of abatement looks like. So when we talk about sliding scale, it starts out at a higher percentage and then declines basically every 2 years. And then in year 11, basically, the abatement would lapse and the property would be fully on the tax rolls then. So that last sentence that you see up there, I know there was a discussion and a response back to the city last year about a request for a 10-year, 100% tax abatement. We can't offer that because what that state code provision is saying is that that's the maximum schedule we can offer. We can offer anything less than that, any combination of something less than that, but we can't exceed what you see up there today. So this is gonna be very, very difficult to read, and I think that, we'll certainly make this slide deck available so people can digest this. This is a hard slide to decipher, but this is an attempt to calculate a projection on the value of that tax abatement. And so that yellow line that you see across there is the city tax levy that you're not paying today. Obviously, we've got a consolidated levy, which is all the taxing entities that you see on the far right there. Our tax levy, this year is $10.85 per thousand. So that puts us at the 4th lowest in the metro. So we do strive politically to make sure that we keep the tax rate as low as we possibly can, but still offer a high level of service. And I think the biggest takeaway from this slide is we just put a projection, I think, of what, $350,000 for, so you can play around with this a little bit and plug in different values, but for this exercise, we did a $350,000 assessed property. That red line that you see, or that maroon line, towards the bottom, is basically the projected estimated value of what the tax abatement incentive would be. And so, the line just below that is if you came into the city, paid full taxes with no tax abatements, and then there's a breakdown of the savings, basically, under this scenario that's showing you that that's a $25,000 tax savings on that city tax levy with this abatement schedule that we're proposing here. So, a lot of information on that one, probably the toughest one to read. So, that, I believe, is gonna conclude my part of this. I'm gonna go ahead and transition this over to Christina Murphy with Waterworks.
Okay, well, thanks, Ryan. I'm gonna walk you through a number of slides, and, as I mentioned, our goal today is just to provide good information so that you feel like you can, make decisions on. And that's really my role here today, is to provide good information. So I've been at the Waterworks, 5 years. Oops, wrong way. Here we go. And I kind of learned about, you know, annexation discussions over the years, and then I kind of got wind that the Fox Creek Benefited Water District was planning to construct a new elevated tower, because your current standpipe is in need of replacement. And that was back in 2022, and just being an engineer and someone who's fairly practical and logical, I look at our system and, you know, we have, and I'll walk you through what infrastructure we have. We have the infrastructure to serve Fox Creek Benefited Water District without significant improvements at all. And so I wrote a letter to the Fox Creek Benefited Water District in 2022 saying, you know, would you be interested in exploring possibly connecting to West Des Moines Waterworks? And they agreed to listen and let us explore those options. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about that today and why we did that and what the results were. Okay. And, you saw down there, you don't know the worth of water until it's dry. We all need water to function every day. I see many of us are drinking water, and we can't function without it. And so, as you're making your decisions, I think it's important that you realize that water is a critical component to a functioning household. And so, that's why I'm gonna talk through, these slides today and kind of go over this system. So it's really important also first to understand the relationship between the city and the waterworks and the Fox Creek Benefited Water District. So we are an independent board governed by a board of trustees. So the city council does not oversee the waterworks. They appoint trustees and they're confirmed by the council, and then we act fairly independently. We set separate policies. Our board sets our rates, our budgets. And so annexation is a discussion. It's a city discussion. But annexation does not necessarily mean that Fox Creek HOA will have West Des Moines Waterworks water. The district, by county rules and state code, still has first right to serve your subdivision. And so unless Fox Creek Benefited Water District and West Des Moines Waterworks come to terms, just because if the city annexes or you agree to annexation does not necessarily mean you will have West Des Moines Waterworks. One great example of that we have in the city is Browns Woods. And so they are served by Thorpe, who I think is also your water service provider, but they actually are the complete owner. And so they serve Browns Woods. And part of the reason for writing my letter is because I don't want to see another Browns Woods, because the people in that subdivision struggle with getting quality water and quality service. And they often call the waterworks, because they're in the city, wanting the waterworks to address it. But we can't, because we're not the water service provider. And so I think it's really important that you guys understand that distinction, that just because you are annexed does not necessarily mean West Des Moines Water will serve you. However, West Des Moines Waterworks does not serve outside our city limits. So if you want the opportunity to be served by West Des Moines Water, you have to be annexed. So they're kind of parallel tracks, but they're interrelated, and that's why we're here with the city to talk about it and why we've been part of that conversation. So important to understand that relationship. On my screen, this looks clear. But like you said, you'll get the slide decks. And so I think it's really important that I walk you through what your current system capabilities are. And then I'm going to talk about what our system capabilities are, so you can understand the differences between the two. So your system, I don't know how familiar you are with what your system, a lot of our customers, just probably like you turn on the water and the water comes out and you pay your bill every month, and you don't really need to think about anything else unless the system breaks, right? Our customers are no different. They only call us when there's a main break or an issue, and generally they turn on the faucet and water comes out, and that's true for any utility across the country. It's a service that many of us take for granted. So your system has 2 wells, okay? We have 17 shallow wells and 4 deep wells in West Des Moines for comparison. The combined rate for your wells is 270 gallons per minute. Those 2 wells are 37 years old and 25 years old respectively, okay? The way the DNR rates those wells, it's the largest well out of service. So I have to have more wells than I actually need in case one of them breaks, right? In your case, your firm capacity, because if one well were to go down, would be 110 gallons per minute. That's what your well field capacity is. In these reports, and I'm citing reports here, I brought a couple of copies just in case you're interested. The 2020 HR Green report was commissioned by the Fox Creek Benefited Water District. The 2020 and 2023 Bolton and Mink reports were done by Napa Valley. And I will say HR Green and Bolton and Mink are 2 very reputable engineering firms here in the metro that do work for many utilities. So I'm sharing the information that's in those reports. So you have 2 wells, firm capacity, The report says that drilling a third well may not be possible because of landowner issues. You have to have certain distance around wells in order to re-drill a well. So you have to have control over that. And that particular property owner is one that you probably, might recall was going to do quarry development. So you didn't necessarily like the quarry development, so that particular property owner owns that water around your existing plants and wells. So it could be very challenging to drill a new well. It's also important to note that many of our wells in West Des Moines, which similar shallow wells, 50 to 80 feet, they only last about 40 to 50 years. Then you have to either recase them and their capacity goes down, or you have to go drill a new well. And so when I'm looking at this report as an engineer and I see a well that's 37 years old, and I know ours start to fail between 40 and 50 years, I think that's something that you guys should pay attention to. Your current manganese, and that's a substance in water, is pretty high coming into the plant, but the plant is working to reduce your manganese. That's that black. You guys see any black specks that happen in your home? I know Napa Valley has shared, they see sometimes black rings. That's usually manganese. And so the current plant is treating that manganese to a level that's safe, and the current plant is operating just fine. The water that's coming out of your tap meets all rules and regulations, so to make sure that that's clear. However, if you have a well that fails or your plant fails, you may not be able to treat that manganese to the same level. So that means you won't be able to produce as much water. So everybody has to reduce, to restrict severely how much water they use. The other thing is your plant is currently at a capacity of 250 gallons per minute if everything is running at full bore. But your system has actually peaked at almost 400,000 gallons. So that's 270 gallons per minute. So your plant can't keep up with what you're actually demanding on a peak summer day. You've got that standpipe, it helps, but you start to drain that, probably drain that down and there's not much available. And so you're running a system that's really hard, and Thorpe is doing a good job of maintaining it, but you're running it at max. And in the water utility, we don't run our systems at max continuously without backups. It's just not, it's not the DNR standards. Now, I've talked to engineers, your plant's working well. I'll call it like, okay, I have a Tahoe that's got 200,000 miles on it, okay? That's been a great car. I don't know if it's gonna keep going for another 100,000, and it may, or it may have a problem tomorrow. And you're not going to be able to predict that. And so I just want you to understand your system could go for another 5, 10 years with no problem, but it may not. And you need to be prepared to address that. Okay, so enough about your system. Let's talk about West Des Moines Water Works' system just for comparison. As I mentioned, there's multiple wells, multiple connections served by multiple treatment plants. That's what a robust utility does. We have redundancies in place, so if wells fail, others turn on. We have sustained and possibly increased pressure for those connection points, and we don't really need a lot of system improvements besides a little bit of connection main to connect the system. So if you're not familiar, there's actually a 16-inch water main that runs down Mill Civic Parkway. There's water main at Boonville and 115th Avenue that was put in place by the data center. And then there's future water main planned north along V Avenue. So that's in place and planned. We have 2 towers already in place and going to serve the system. And we currently have an ASR, an aquifer storage and recovery well, under construction. That's 3 million gallons per day of capacity. So what you get in a utility of our size is something that's robust. Okay, I hear this, people ask about rates. What are the difference between the rates? And so what I did is I pulled your current Fox Creek benefited water district rates So 5,000 gallons per minute is pretty typical in West Des Moines Water Works household. I'll tell you, based on what I understand, 9,000 is probably more common in Fox Creek. I don't know if you guys use a lot of outside water, but, that's our understanding. So the first line is the current Fox Creek Benefited Water District rates, and the second line is the current West Des Moines Water Works rate. So pretty close, not too far off, especially at the 5,000 gallon, which is what we typically see households use in West Des Moines. Okay. I put this up here because, you know, okay, I'm an engineer. I get accused of talking pretty technically sometimes, but I think what I want to do is make a comparison for you, or financial food for thought, why economies of scale matter. Fox Creek Benefited Water District has 220 customers. We have closing on 29,000 customers. And so when you have infrastructure costs, you're able to divide that out by a greater number of people. And so this is a slide I put together a couple of years ago, and I did update a little bit, but I didn't try and update interest rates or construction costs. So a new water tower for Fox Creek Benefited Water District was going to be $1.5 million in 2022. I can guarantee you that's gone up. How many of you have had costs go up in the last 2 years? Yeah, we see that in the construction world quite a bit too. And so 3.5% was the interest you could get in 2022. I'm not sure if that would still remain. And so the debt service on that, that's like if you take out a loan, how much you have to pay per year, is $104,000 for 20 years. So that translates, because you have 220 customers, to $474 per customer per year for 20 years. And these reports say your tower should be, your standby should be replaced at its earliest convenience. So that cost is coming. So if you have a well fail, I talked about a well being 37 years old, and if it fails at 40 or whenever, one new well, that's $600,000. I just got a cost update. That's lower than what I have currently, but we'll run with it. We'll be, be generous here. 3.5% for 20 years, debt service is $42,000 a year. That translates to $190 per customer per year for 20 years. This is simplistic in a way, but it's just to kind of show you the costs that your system is facing over the next decade. A new plant. This report talks about it being somewhere between 10 and 15 years or sooner. That report was done in 2020, so 5 years has almost gone by. It was $4 million, now it's $5 million in 2022. That's gone up, and so translates to $1,580 per customer per year for 20 years. And I compared to some things happening in West Des Moines. We're fortunate. We have some industry customers that have been good to work with at the waterworks. The new water tower on Adams Street that would serve this area was paid for by industry. So our ratepayers paid $0 for that water tower. 2 new shallow wells we currently have in design. That's going to translate to $2.81 per customer per year for 20 years. The new ASR that is under construction, $12.25 million, that was paid for by industry. So that translates to $0 for our ratepayers. We work hard to be the lowest ratepayers. We have the lowest rates in the metro, and we have for a long time. So just to understand why economies of scale matter when you have a small system. Now, connection to West Des Moines Water Works is not free. Nobody's going to try and pull that over. There are costs, right? There's costs to anything to connect. So these are the 2 fees that we generally charge, are water supply connection fees. Those are implemented by the Board of Trustees. Basically, growth in West Des Moines helps pay for the infrastructure that's needed to serve that growth. And so in the green area would be your area, and I think we're at a little over $3,400 per acre. Now, some of you have more than 1 acre, is that correct? So generally, our board, when we've had existing homesteads come in, be annexed, will do a 1 acre charge and they'll defer the rest. So if you ever subdivided your parcel, then that would trigger that new person would have to pay the connection fees. But if you stayed at the current parcel that you have, if you have 7 acres and you never subdivide it, you'll have paid that 1 acre fee. And then we have connection fees. Those are about $700 for a typical household meter per customer. So there are some fees there that West Des Moines Waterworks would charge. We don't waive those charges for any of our customers. We don't waive them for the city, and we don't waive them for Microsoft, and we have never waived them. So I know people ask about waiving them, and that hasn't really happened. So I just need to make sure you guys understand there is cost there. I'll talk about how I think there's a way that that could be offset. So you currently, this is actually one of your fire hydrants. To our knowledge, there's not a functional fire hydrant in your system. We're not 100% sure. So if you were to have a fire, nobody could hook up to it to try and put out a fire in your subdivision. They'd have to haul water. I'll defer to this guy on that. But, so if you're going to be annexed in the city, we have a responsibility, we support the fire department of bringing it up to some minimum standard so that they can do their job. And so there would be hydrants that would need to be replaced, and we would need to negotiate an agreement on main breaks / replacement, so similar to what we did in Pheasant Ridge. So we've done this before, right? Pheasant Ridge is a good example. Your mains are 2-inch to 6-inch. They're not anywhere near West Des Moines Waterworks standards. We're not going to try and replace all that day one. That doesn't make any sense. So what we have done in the past is we've signed an agreement that basically says as long as you don't have any breaks, so many breaks within a certain time frame, as time marches on, West Des Moines Waterworks will pick up more and more of the cost. If you have a part of your system that has a bunch of breaks in a short period of time in a segment, then that will trigger replacement, and you'll have to pay proportionally to offset those costs. And we typically in Pheasant Ridge have only replaced the area that we think we need to replace. We try and keep that to a minimum, but it has happened, I think once or twice. So the connection needs, and I'm only talking about Fox Creek Acres. I think it's important to know that there's other pieces of the benefited water district that will have to require connection. But we're going to talk about this subdivision for now. So all the service lines that are along Mills Civic, we have a number of homes that are served by Fox Creek Benefited Water District that face Mills. Their service lines will be rerouted to Mills Civic main. And then the rest of you, we would connect the 6-inch main in this subdivision to help get you connected. Okay, this is another one of those slides that you're going to have to look at maybe closely later. So I'm going to try and explain what you're going to see here. I know it's a little hard to read. I think time starts to get together, but I think it was 2 years ago. Okay, we asked Public Finance Management, their PFM is what they're known in town. They serve about every municipal city. They help us with our rate projection. So we give them costs. They help us finance the best plan to get those infrastructure put into place. So I asked them to take what was in the HR Green report, the costs and the timing, and implement that in there and look at the cost of water and basically look at the savings that you would have for being annexed to West Des Moines Waterworks versus the taxes that you're going to pay. So what I'm trying to do is show you the difference of either whether you're going to have to potentially, whether you're going to be ahead or behind by annexing to the city and becoming a West Des Moines Waterworks customer versus staying out and being a Fox Creek Benefited Water District customer and having to do the improvements that are outlined in here, okay? So does it make sense? Because what I hear, and rightfully so, is I don't want to pay more taxes, right? You don't want to pay more taxes by being in the city. But what I am trying to show you with this report, and I'm gonna walk you through this, is you may be paying more in water costs than you are in the additional taxes to the city. And so if finances are your driver, this is a really important slide for you to pay attention to. I can't control all the rest of it, but I'm gonna talk to you about why it may make sense from a water perspective. And so up here is there's 5,000 gallons, 9,000 gallons, and 12,000. I mentioned, I think when we looked, there was an average of 9,000 gallons per month. That's with Napa, and maybe you guys are a little less, I don't know. But 9,000, typically we see households 5,000 to 6,000. So on the left is your assessed value. I did a whole scheme from 200,000 up to, I think the highest assessed home, 700, standing my glasses, 700 and something thousand. And so what you see there in green is the savings. So if you are a low water user or normal water user at 5,000 gallons, and you have a $200,000 assessed home, you'll be ahead in 10 years by $5,000, $5,164. However, if you're a low water user and you have the most expensive home in the neighborhood, you'll be behind by about $3,900, okay? Now, if you're a 9,000 gallon month user, you're ahead no matter what. If you have a pool or you like to irrigate and you use 12,000 gallons a month, you're ahead. And that's with the tax abatement, okay? So without the tax abatement, that would look different. But with the tax abatement, it makes this look a lot different. And so I asked PFM, I kind of had a hunch, so I asked PFM to run the numbers based on this report. So this is, not me saying what your improvements are. It's an reputable engineering firm that told the district these are the improvements that you need to make, plugging that in. Okay. So we gave a proposal. It's a clunky sort of system. You got a benefited water district, you got an HOA, you got a waterworks that's separate from the city, and we all are trying to figure out this path forward. And I have this sign in my office that says, "Do what's right, not what's easy." And so when I sent that letter in 2022, I knew that I won't say opening a can of worms, but opening a difficult situation that's going to take some time for everybody to understand. And the benefited water district doesn't control annexation. They only control your water system. And Waterworks doesn't control annexation, only the city does. So we worked with the city to give a proposal to the benefited water district. And if you look closely and you total that up, it's about $1.4 million. This is setting aside the tax abatement. It was $1.4 million worth of improvements or connection costs, things like that, to connect the homes, connect the benefited water district. And then there were some costs by you to do the hydrants. Napa's got $500,000 worth of hydrant work to do, and Fox Creek we estimated to be $60,000. But we thought that those district fees could be offset by the balance that at the time was in the bank for Fox Creek benefited water district. So we put this proposal together. Unfortunately, the benefited water district declined, and a lot of it related to annexation. They're not in control of annexation, and they politely declined because, again, it's chicken and egg sort of situation here. So that's, we were sad to see that, but maybe the time wasn't right. So I'm going to share why I think the time is right for you, okay? My job is water. Economies of scale, your system needs improvements. Do I know if they're tomorrow or if they're 10 years from now? I don't. I know your tower needs to be done, and I think the trustees know that too. They've planned that. Do I know if your well is going to fail? If we had another drought year, I probably would have put my percentages higher because I know how badly our wells were hurting after a multi-year drought. I can't imagine you guys have similar wells, 2 wells. When you run them hard, it hurts them in a drought for a sustained period of time. I don't know if that's tomorrow. I don't know if that's 10 years from now. I don't know the timeline. But I know when I read this report, it's something to pay attention to because these things don't happen overnight. You can't just have a failure and think it's going to be fixed, a big failure, and it's gonna be fixed tomorrow. We have electrical components that are 18 months on delay. It's taking me 18 months to get them in. And if I put them on emergency, it's at least 4 or 5 months to get them in. And so, because of economies of scale, that slide I showed you, we can provide you long-term water costs, your long-term water needs at a lower cost. It's just economies of scale. Increased reliability and redundancy. You don't have this looming over your head. I know it's really easy to turn on the faucet and not worry about it, but you guys own a system. 220 people, customers, own a system that you're gonna be responsible for. We have a long history of having the lowest rates in the metro, and fire protection. I can't say enough about the fire department. We work together to support each other, to make sure the infrastructure is there. You're currently hauling water. If you were to have a fire and you tried to put something on with that system, if you tried to connect that system, which I don't know if you could, because of the capacity of your plant and the capacity of your standpipe, you would not be able to sustain water for a very long period of time. Everybody, the standpipe would go dry and nobody would have water. That's probably why if they came in, they'd have to haul water. So, fire protection, I know everybody thinks it won't happen to them, so it does. I hope that's something that you think about as a good possibility, a good opportunity. Western Mars has an experienced team of professionals. There's 40 of us. We're staffed 24/7, 365 days a year. If we sense something in, a problem is in the system, we have people on call that come in and address it. That's just something that happens with a larger utility. I think the city of West Des Moines and the West Des Moines Waterworks, at least our board, has been willing to come to the table to share in the cost, because we think it makes a lot of sense right now. If Fox Creek Benefited Water District remains independent and doesn't want to connect, or you don't want to annex, which again, this is your decision, I can't ensure that the trustees are going to provide one, or whatever, it was 700,000 of incentives to connect you in the future. Like, those costs, those incentives are here now. And so, I don't know that the Board of Trustees would be willing to give that money. Right now, I have money in the budget, in the CIP, to pay those costs. But if we don't want to move forward, I'm going to delete them out at this point. We won't tie up that money for that reason. The cost of addressing future water issues, if you're even able to, like, if you're able to address the new well, are going to be more than the increase to your tax if you come into the city. For the most, as I shared, for 75, 80% of you. So, something to consider if you're being financially driven, if you're making a financial decision. I recognize that there are other factors in this. Those are ones I can't control. I'm a numbers person. So I'm hoping that what I shared with you is the numbers and why I think this makes a lot of sense for you. And I put this up here again because I'm going to keep harping on it. People don't really think about our line of business until the water doesn't come out the faucet. And so it's hard to have a home that you can live in if you don't have water. All right. I know I took up a long time. I'll turn it over to Linda. Hopefully, you can ask me whatever questions you want at the end.
Again, I'm Linda Schimmel, I'm the planning administrator, and so my work here with the city is planning, zoning, and then I've also coordinate with building inspection. So, and I don't have as many slides. Oops, wrong way. There we go. So let's look at kind of the big picture right now. When we talk about planning and zoning, land use is a planning. The city is allowed to fund with it outside of boundaries up to 2 miles. Now, there's a couple of exceptions. If you have adjacent cities, sometimes they agree to different areas that they can annex. But there's a lot of important aspects when you start planning outside your boundaries. One, it allows you to plan infrastructure. Now, kind of as we talked about waterworks, infrastructure is not something that you can solve instantly. It's something that takes a lot of planning and a lot of budgeting. So you have the advantage of planning for that really before any property would come into the city boundary. The second is to plan city services. Again, you know, we have to respond to additional service area, with staffing, equipment. Now we have kind of that long-term picture that we can plan for rather than trying to solve something immediately. And one of the other key elements is really making sure that uses within the city work well together, that we have enough of the different types of uses, and that they're all provided that infrastructure and service that we had talked about. So that's the important part of looking at land use. So right now, the city's already looked at that land use and assigned what we call detached residential for the land use, which is compatible with how we're using the land right now. The second is what we call place type. That's intended to connect the big picture, planning, the land use part of it, and then the more specific zoning, which is actual regulation. So the place type that we would assign to your development is called estate residential. And that talks a little bit more about the character of the development. You know, what kind of roads, what kind of residential uses, how big the lots are, amenities, that kind of thing. And so that would be a place type assignment that would match with what's there now. Then zoning. Zoning really gets into the law. It talks about what uses are allowed, what we call bulk regulations. You know, how big is the lot? How far do you have to be from the property line? How tall your building can be? All those definite numbers that we look at when we look at developing property. So there's a couple different residential zoning districts that could fit in the development. Now, what we would do is, at the time of annexation, we would look at the development and then look at which zoning category would give you the least amount of nonconformity. And I just did a cursory review of the development. There's some development currently that does not meet some of our standards, mostly in the bulk regulation area. But what we want to do as staff is create the least amount of nonconformity. So that's something we'll look at that time that a decision is made for annexation. So we've heard a lot about grandfathering, and I'm going to kind of talk about it in the city aspect. We really call it about legal nonconformities. Those are elements that have been established legally outside the city, and they're in active use. And as they come into the city, they don't necessarily meet one aspect or another. That's a legal nonconformity. You can also have illegal nonconformities. Those are things that are created within the county or wherever the area is illegally at the time that it was created. That, when you bring that into the city, that doesn't necessarily cure that nonconformity. We don't make it better by just bringing it into the city. The city has the right to say, no, you weren't legally established at the time. We won't consider you legally non-conforming at this time. I would say it's very rare that that happens. Usually the counties do a very good job of making sure things get built according to their codes and the uses are according to the codes. But just to let you kind of know, when we talk about that, what those two categories are. So again, on a broad scale, there's really two non-conformities that we would talk about for your development. One would be the structures themselves. The second would be the uses. Now, the structures, again, if it's constructed in compliance with the county zoning building codes at the time, you're legal non-conforming, it can be brought in. Same with uses. If it's something allowed in the county, at the time it was established, it's legal non-conforming. A lot of people have questions, especially in a rural or residential category, such as, you know, can I have farm animals? Can I have horses? Those are typical uses within a residential area. Uses that are commercial in nature, to a certain extent, are allowed in residential if they're small scale, what we call home occupation. But we wouldn't expect a large commercial use to be acceptable in a residential area. Now, if it is a non-conforming use and it comes into the city, it stays as non-conforming, but if that use is stopped for over a year, that's lost that status. It's not considered legal non-conforming. So if someone wants to restart that use, they would have to go through our process to get that use approved. Now, conformity runs with the property. It doesn't change when you have a different, owner. So that's really kind of that physical aspect that would continue on as a legal nonconforming until something happens to that structure or that use. So what can you do with nonconforming structures? So within the context of your development, you can repair, you can do non-structural alterations, paint, anything that is something that would not alter the structure. Now, there's exceptions to that alteration of the structure. If you have a structure that is in disrepair or is threatening the safety, you're allowed to make that a safe building or basically solve that condition that's going to make it a safety issue. What we would do with that is we would work with the homeowner to determine what are those scopes of changes, and then we would make that determination, yes, you can do that non-conforming. We like to be in contact rather than just having people assume, because we don't want you to make a decision on something that really affects your ability to use the property afterwards. So, again, if you're in the city staff is there to answer questions. So anytime that you're considering a change after you're within the city, talk to us, talk to the planning, zoning, and building inspection. We'll let you know what's allowed. Now, expansion. Legal non-conforming aspects cannot be expanded. Now, there is an exception for detached garages. If they're legal non-conforming at a certain point, you can build them at that same setback. But for the most part, if it's a setback issue that's non-conforming, you can't expand that illegal setback. Now, you can add to it, but all that new construction has to be at the current setback. So we're trying to basically allow some flexibility in changes, but not make that nonconformity worse. And then rebuild. And this is pretty typical in a lot of different communities, but a determination is made if you have a damaged structure on your property. If it's destroyed up to 50% or more, that structure cannot be reconstructed except if it conforms with the current regulations. So if you had a shed that was on a 5-foot setback and that wasn't allowed, if that shed is destroyed more than 50%, you could rebuild the shed, but you won't be able to reuse that 5-foot setback. You would have to go with whatever the district setback is. And once you're in the city, any new construction will require appropriate building permits. Big picture, and I'm sure there's lots of questions, so when we get to the question part, we can go ahead and go through that. But this just kind of sets the stage on what's allowed and not allowed and how it's considered legal non-conforming. Let's skip that. I'll pass it over to Brian.
Okay.
And Brian, just for the sake of time, we'll make sure we leave time for questions.
I'm good at that. And what the heck is this thing? Like that? The middle button. The middle button. Okay, here we go. I'm gonna talk about sewer, internet, streets, and then I'm gonna talk a little bit about mills. So, many of you know about the sanitary sewer that we built, through Fox Creek and then between Fox Creek and Sugar Creek Hills. That was a fee district sewer. You didn't have to pay for any of that. You weren't in the city, but we went through, we had to purchase right away from you to put it in. These are the portions that we put in yellow. Now, to hook onto that sewer, you need a collection system. We can't just connect people to that because obviously not everybody's right next to it. And we discourage direct connections to that because it's a trunk sewer. Some engineering reasons I'd go through, but I don't have the time for that. But a collector system of some kind needs to be built, whether it's gravity, which is very expensive. 4.4 million is what we are thinking to serve 82 properties. It's about 54,000 a lot. That's a lot of money. There are other ways that we can do that.
that are less expensive, but we haven't looked at those, and that's something that we can look at throughout this process. We can also look at the possibility of just working with Dallas County to just leave you alone from the sanitary sewer aspect completely, and then you just rebuild your septic system if it ever fails. There's a few things that we can do. Obviously, there's a fee also attached to that on top of what it would cost to do the collection system. I know this does not look great, so I'll move on. But those are the ones in red. Some of them are kind of backed in yellow. That would be what we would have to build to serve every lot in Fox Creek and Sugar Creek Hills. All right, I'm going to move on to internet. I'm not going to go through this whole thing, but basically we built a network across the entire city. We're done with it. It cost $60 million. We're getting that money recovered through lease payments. We can build this in Fox Creek and Sugar Creek Hills if we're given permission to be in the common areas, basically along the streets of those subdivisions. It's going to cost the city about $800,000 to build, but the city pays for that. We've done that across the whole city. You would get access to multiple fiber, and I can't express fiber internet service providers enough. I can't really say what's good or better or anything like that because I don't want to get in trouble. But I can tell you that I changed at my own house, and the service level is fantastic. So that is a huge benefit. This is what it'll look like, though, in your neighborhood for a little while we build this. There will be these vaults out in front. It'll be a little different in Fox Creek than it would be in Sugar Creek Hills because of the ditches versus the curb. But we've been priding ourselves on the restoration. Most places around town are looking like the picture on the right, and most people are happy. We all know not everybody's going to be happy, so we just deal with it as it comes. Okay, internal private streets. Sugar Creek Hills is a lot different than Fox Creek. It is possible that the city could take that street over, but there may have to be some upgrades to that street that are done. We would have to do some analysis to that street. There's a lot of things that the city typically doesn't like obstructions in the right-of-way. There's no reinforcing in the concrete. There's a lot of steep slopes, and there's some things in there that we like to have that probably aren't there. So we would need to analyze it further. It's possible on Sugar Creek Hills. You can see this is a picture from street view, so I apologize. There's a fair amount of patching that goes on there. You can see from the aerials also there's a lot of staining on the roads from a lot of irrigation. That's not good for the road either, so those are things that we would have to address. Fox Creek is a rural cross-section. We have no idea what the asphalt depth is. We don't know the condition of the asphalt. Those are all things that, and this one's a little less likely because the way we're set up to maintain, we're not set up to maintain rural cross-sections. We're set up to maintain city streets with curb and gutter and storm sewer. The culvert crossing is kind of a big question mark in Fox Creek. We don't know what the condition is. We don't know if it's undersized, so that could be a very big expense as well. And there's trees and obstructions in that as well. So we do need to analyze that further. There's a picture of that. I'm sorry if that's your car, but that's what was in street view. And then we have, quickly, this has nothing to do with the annexation, but I do want to talk to you about the Mill Civic reconstruction because it's going to affect you. So the phase 1 is currently underway, and you may have seen a lot of clearing happening down in the Fox Creek and Sugar Creek area. There will be a closure of that road for about 2 to 3 months. So you will not be able to go to the west at all for 2 to 3 months. That's likely going to happen this fall. So anybody that's got children that go to the Waukee School District, it's probably going to mess with you a little bit. And we apologize for that. That's just the price of progress. We all know that road is not in great shape, and we're trying to make that better. Phase 2 is from South 91st Street all the way to Grand Prairie Parkway. So what we're going to do there, the existing road, you know where that's at, just goes south of there. We're gonna build a new road just south of there. We're gonna leave the old road open while we're building that. There'll be very limited closures. There'll be a little bit of a pain when we're rebuilding your, the drive entrance into both subdivisions. But those are things that we pride ourselves on, providing people access. We've done it before, we'll do it again. There'll be a little bit of pain, and that's how it is with road construction. That's why nobody likes to see me come into their neighborhood and do stuff. So, but there's very minimal closures on that project. You can see some of the dates there. We hope to complete it in December of '26. And for some reason, I'm gonna start this whole thing over because this is double up in this presentation. Sorry, I'm just gonna go through the same slides again. And we'll get down to Mike. That was it.
So they leave me till the end, and they say you only get one slide. So that's, and 1 minute is what they said. So, real quick,
Let's go the other way.
I got up and walked out, quickly because I was getting a text message that, there was a car fire out in your subdivision. I don't know, did some of you were kind of looking at cell phones and things like that? I don't know any details about it, but I find it ironic we're here to talk about fire protection, and here there's emergency responders out in your neighborhood. So, forgive me for leaving. I didn't get many details on it, but let's quickly talk about what we have with the West Des Moines Fire Department. My question to all of you, who responds now to your subdivision? I don't know the answer. I think I know the answer, but who is it that's coming that's guaranteed? Waukee. Yeah.
Had many, well, not many, but the occasions we've had, both West Des Moines and depending on what it is.
Right, and so I kind of want to talk about that because I understand it as Waukee is your primary, fire department. Great fire department, great personnel out there. It is a considerable distance away from where you're at, is where their one station is, up on LA Grant Parkway. I know that they currently are building a second station, but that is going to be on the northwest side of their city. So what happens if Waukee all of a sudden gets a fire in your district, in your neighborhood, or they can't respond, is they have a mutual aid agreement with us. Has anyone ever heard of that term before, mutual aid? Okay? That can get a little tricky sometimes on understanding exactly what that means. I'm not saying it to scare anyone, but that means that people could be responding. It doesn't always necessarily mean someone is going to respond for mutual aid. Because even though we have these mutual aid agreements, if we have the resources to send, we will send them. If we don't, we can't send anyone. So when would be some situations where we don't have resources? Well, a prime example would be last week when the thunderstorms came through and we had those wind events. We end up basically keeping all of our resources in the city limits of West Des Moines to serve our citizens. We started getting bombarded with a ton of calls because we had trees down. We had power lines down. So if something were to happen at that particular time, we would not have the resources to send. That's just the way that it is. Same thing happens if all of a sudden we need mutual aid in the city of West Des Moines, Waukee, Clive, Urbandale. They may not be able to send us additional resources to help us out. All of you live really close to where we had a huge fire back in 2020, right at the intersection of 88th and Mill Civic. The Cedar Ridge fire, okay? Anybody know how long we were on the scene of that fire? Anybody want to take a guess? 19 hours. We had every single fire department at that particular fire, at least representation of it, with the exception of the city of Des Moines. Now, that doesn't mean they sent all of their resources. They may have been able to send 1 truck, 2 trucks, it just depends. That is a worst-case scenario, but when you look at that building that burned, we put over 900,000 gallons of water onto that fire over the course of 19 hours. So when we sit here and talk about what we need to make things work from a fire protection standpoint, I know Christina was talking about the hydrants that would go in potentially into your development if you went on the West Des Moines water side of things. We need those hydrants to provide what is called fire flow, all right? Our fire trucks can pump or actually discharge 1,500 gallons per minute out of our trucks. But if we don't have a water source to connect to, it doesn't do us any good.
The only way to bring water into an area that does not have fire hydrants is with tanker trucks, and we call it a water shuttle operation. That takes time, and it takes the right vehicles to do that. We have one tender or tanker in the city of West Des Moines. We would immediately call other jurisdictions to bring those tankers to us, and it's a constant. They literally dump that water into what looks like gigantic swimming pools above ground. They have to go back, fill it up, and they continue to do that as we are pumping water out of those porta tanks. When we have hydrants, we don't need to do that. We're able to connect hoses to that and flow the water. It makes things very much easier for us. The closest station to your subdivision right now, your community, is the fire station at South 81st and Mills. We ran some rough math on what it would be for a response time to the worst case scenario that was 33063 Fox Creek Drive. Is that anybody's address? That's yours. That's the farthest away. All right? That's the farthest away. Now, that's a good thing, because we're trying to say, all right, based on our data, how long would it take to get a fire truck or an ambulance from that station to the farthest point? It takes us about a minute to leave the station, get ready, get dressed, leave the station, about 3 minutes and 50 seconds of travel time. So we say less than 5 minutes, we should have somebody rolling up on you from that station. Now, if that station is out on another call, your closest station is at 68th and University, unless we were to call mutual aid from Waukee, and Waukee could send somebody. So we have 5 stations right now. We're looking at building 2 more. When that's going to be, we don't know. Both of those would be south of the river, one east of I-35, one west of I-35. But it's far into the distance. It's all going to be growth driven. Okay? One thing I also want to quickly talk about is our minimum staffing. At any given time in the city limits of West Des Moines, our minimum staffing of firefighters is 18 personnel. That accounts for at least 4 people that might be sick or on vacation. If everyone is on duty, you would have 22 people, but at least you know you have at least 18 firefighters. When it comes time for EMS personnel, during the daytime, you have a minimum staffing of 9 that is on. At night, that drops down to 7. So during peak times, we have 4 ambulances staffed. Overnight, we have 3. That's a good thing. Some cities only have 1 ambulance and 1 fire truck staffed with personnel. We have staffing at all 5 of our stations, at least with firefighters. Everyone brings up the whole thing about open burning. I'm not going to lie to you. Open burning is not allowed within the city limits of West Des Moines. And the reason for that is a state law that goes back a long time. Back when they created a state law for air quality, there were 13 cities that you could not do open burning in. The city of Des Moines was one of those cities. If you physically touched that city with your corporate boundary, you could not burn either. So then we started looking at, all right, West Des Moines at the time was in Polk County and Dallas County. Was it fair to have people be able to burn on the west side of 60th compared to the east side? We ended up making it a city ordinance because it would have been a jurisdictional nightmare to enforce it. So what does that mean that you can't burn? Can you have a recreational fire? Only if it doesn't produce smoke. Again, it's air quality. We have to enforce it. I don't know if those rules are going to change anytime soon, but as development is starting to grow closer and closer to some of these communities or neighborhoods that we have on the outskirts of the city, people do complain about the people that can burn because of the air quality. And so that complaint process can lead all the way up to the state. It's just something that they take seriously because nobody wants to give bad air quality or smoke somebody out of their home, so to speak. So that's where that whole burning comes from, and that's why we don't allow it, is because of that law. And again, we made it a citywide ordinance. So I just wanted to bring that part of it up because I know I get a lot of questions on that. All right? That is a very quick nutshell of emergency response with fire and EMS, and I know I went longer than a minute, Ryan, so I'm sorry.
No, that was educational. And way to end on a bang too with that.
Yeah, I have to bring it up because
That does conclude our presentation, so we are happy to stick around and have questions that anyone might have for us at this time.
Would the addresses change?
There's chances that the addresses would change. Until we evaluate it, I can't tell you for sure.
No,
No,
this
this is just purely information.
purely informational. I think that the best course of action would be to discuss this collectively with your homeowners association and,
This group right here doesn't have.
are you on Mill Civic?
Yeah.
Okay, okay. For those that are within the homeowners association, I think that's probably a good next step. I mean, if you wanted to collectively discuss that with your neighbors, digest this presentation, let us know what questions that you might have. From our perspective, I mean, we're happy to reach out again and see it, you know, if this is something that it looks like, you know, the collective group wants to move forward with, there is a consent to annexation form, that we would send out, basically. And that's what we've been doing with some of these large property owners to try to get to that 80-20 annexation I talked about at the beginning. We're not there yet. I'll be honest with you that we've still got some work to do, but that's kind of what we've been working on, are these large property owners, some of which they want to come in and get development going on their property.
Yeah, I'll also send it to Hannah, and she can distribute it, however.
Am I correct that it appears that there's like 1,300 acres?
1340 is what we estimate within the annexation area. That doesn't include Napa Valley. If we go back to that map, it's quite a ways up there, in the slide deck. Napa's further south. If they ever came into the city of West Des Moines, that'd be a separate annexation.
What percentage of that 1,340 have voluntarily consented to annexation?
At the moment, we're sitting between 40 to 50%, but we do have some large landowners that acknowledge that, hey, they get it, when the time is right to annex, it would be West Des Moines. They would need our utilities basically to develop their property. So it's in hands such that they realize it's coming into the city at this point, though they just haven't furnished their consent to annex just yet.
So separately, just not the same, West Des Moines Waterworks in 2012 purchased the rights from Xenia all the way to V Avenue. So Xenia cannot serve up to V Avenue, and then as of last year, West Des Moines Waterworks purchased the rights to serve all of that property out to Ute Avenue. So West Des Moines Waterworks' intent is to serve the growth of West Des Moines Waterworks, not Xenia.
So on a sewer question, Brian, this one's for you.
Yeah.
So those of us that are closest to the sewer line, I understand we can't do a direct connection. It would be much easier to put collectors in for us and just provide sewer services for those of us that are closest to the sewer line. Is it a possibility to just put some of us, or give us, some of us the opportunity to hook up to the sewer line?
So I had that conversation with some of the engineers actually today, about, because we knew that, you know, putting a collection system in for the entire subdivision was pretty crazy. And it's possible. You're starting to, we don't like picking winners and losers sometimes, with the city, so that would be kind of doing that. So it'd be something we'd have to carefully discuss and weigh the risks of. And now there's some requirements by Dallas County. If you're a certain distance away, you must hook on.
Right.
So those are, but I would argue that that's not a sewer that you can connect to. So those are things we would have to work out with Dallas County to determine whether or not we can or cannot connect.
Right, and years ago, we had this conversation. You already picked losers because you put the sewer line in our backyard.
Yeah, I'm sorry. You live next to the creek, so
Yeah.
that's where we put our big sewers.
You were in a bit of a rush through your presentation. Can you talk briefly again about the cost, the hookup cost for, there was something like a $50,000 cost, and there was a $5,000 number.
Yes. So there's a few, just like, Christina has, and she's able, with her, scenario, she was able to work through some other, dollars like that are in the Fox Creek dollars, and there's money there already, whereas.
There could be.
There could be money there.
It's possible. I don't know if that's.
Right, with sanitary sewer, there's no money, so it is whatever it costs to put the collector sewer in, that is gonna have to be borne by the people that are served by it. there's nobody else in the city that would be benefited by that sewer, except for the people in Fox Creek. So that cost is, we did something, we updated it in like 2017, and then I looked at what inflation costs for construction costs were, increased to about 4.4 million. You divide that out, and it's about $54,000 per lot or per homeowner in that area. And then that other $5,700, that's the connection fee that you would have to pay the city, and that's what paid for the collector sewers that were in yellow that I showed you earlier. The ones that are in there now, that's what that money pays for, is those sewers. So the city's basically fronting those costs for that trunk sewer to even get it to the subdivision. That $5,700 is what's paying for that. So it'd be $5,700 per house, plus the cost of getting the collector sewers in. It's an insane amount of money, and I'm just being honest with you. You're gonna be $60,000 just in fees to the city, and then you're gonna have to take care of your septic system. You're gonna have to connect to it. You're probably into $5,000 to $8,000 there too. So we're gonna have to look at other ways to sewer this community. I mean, back when we first started looking at it, it was in the early 2000s, and the numbers were a little bit more palatable. With the increases we've had in construction costs, and it's a lot of money, and I can't imagine that anybody in here would want to pay that.
Excuse me, so
Yeah.
you're saying it's effectively $60,000 per household, you don't have any idea how that's getting paid, could be homeowner, could be city funds.
No, it won't be city funds.
So each of us are on the hook for $60,000.
Yeah, I'm telling you, what's that?
Can they remain septic though?
Yeah, and that's the thing, is a lot of you aren't right next to the sewer, and some of you are. There is a requirement by Dallas County, if you're within 200 feet of a sewer and your septic fails, you must connect. And that, I would argue with Dallas County that the sewer that's available in your subdivision right now, technically you can't connect to because it's a trunk sewer. So I don't think that would apply. So I don't know any of this for fact yet, but based on what I know, I've worked on septic systems and sewers for 30 plus years. Based on what I know about state law and based on what I know about how these things work, I believe we could have it so that, like Pheasant Ridge, they are all still on septic. They have, there's been failures out there and they've just rebuilt on their own lot. Your folks' lots are big enough that you could rebuild on them. So I would think, and I don't know, I don't want to speak for you, but if I was living in your subdivision, I would much rather just redo my septic system than pay $60,000 to be on.
So if your individual value proposition as a homeowner is the value of getting on septic, it's gonna cost you $60,000. Or getting on sewer, it's gonna cost you.
Yes.
So comparatively, it's not really an upgrade. It's
It
an
isn't.
upgraded service, but not financial.
Right, and I'm just being blunt with you. I'm telling you the God's honest truth here. It's not a great deal. The sewer side of things is not a great deal. There's other things that I think the internet's a great deal for you, but I don't think the.
Well, the sewer is the same cost as internet,
Well, they're two totally different things. And I'm sorry. I'm a direct person. I'll tell you the direct. I'm not going to sugarcoat it.
In that same vein, if something was figured out where septic could remain, would that transfer to new owners as well?
Yeah.
If we find ourselves unfortunately in an island, does that force the hand then, and we are forced to convert and be annexed? If everyone around, because I'm not in Fox Creek, not part of the HOA, but I see I'm on the edge and it could easily happen.
The city development board for the state of Iowa just won't allow us to even get to a situation like that where an island's created. So you know, if this didn't pan out and we took another route of just annexing certain properties in, you know, at some point, we're not gonna be able to annex everything that we see in this blue here, because there'd be an island that would remain out there. And, you know, I mean, I'm trying to come up with, again, I use the word kind of defensible boundaries that don't, something that makes sense, that it doesn't have a lot of irregularities to it. You know, to snake a boundary out to the county and run that all the way down to Boonville, I mean, that's something that I suppose could be discussed, but I don't know if the city development board's gonna go for something like that either. It has to make sense from their perspective and their standards to make sure we have a cohesive boundary. Yes, sir.
I'd like, just a clarification. I'm confused, or just don't understand. On Mill Civic right now runs over to Grand Prairie Parkway. And then somebody mentioned South 91st Street. Yeah. I don't know where South 91st Street is.
It's by the fairway.
Okay, so basically they're the same street that we're using now. And are you going to eventually eliminate that section of concrete, right?
Yes.
And it just move it south where they're gonna build a new bridge?
Yes.
And is that gonna be like a 3-lane, one each direction with a center turning lane?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep, you're welcome. I'm sorry, I went really fast through that, and if you want me to go into any more detail, I'd be happy to do it. Yes, sir.
Do you have a prediction on when the other 3 lanes would be built?
I do not. Hopefully after I'm retired, but.
Like, we can, so the people who came out and talked to us, oh, yeah, so it's a 5, 10, 15, 20-year plan, is what they want.
It really depends on like the Kraus piece that, Ryan's talking about, and some of the development to the west. If those really go quickly, then the need for that will go quickly. But if it doesn't go quickly, it could be a while. I mean, you can put a lot of cars on 3 lanes, up to about 15,000+ cars, so. And we're not anywhere near that right now.
At the intersection of South 91st and Grand Prairie, would you ever consider putting that in, instead of stoplights, a roundabout?
No. Are you talking about Mills and
Right.
Grand Prairie? Yes, no. I mean, I'm not gonna explain myself, we're not putting in a roundabout. We don't put in roundabouts in West Des Moines very often.
When are you gonna put the stoplight in?
Actually, we had a conversation with our traffic engineers just this week about that. Right now, it's not warranted. If you,
What do you mean by warrant?
there's a list of warrants that you have to, it has to do with, there could be pedestrians, there could be crashes, it's, volumes, in all directions. And if a certain number of those are met, then we can put a signal in. If you put a signal in when it's not met, you get people that will run red lights and do things when it's not needed. Then people will do things they're not supposed to do. It's just the science behind traffic engineering, and that's why we do it. But what I'm telling you is, this engineer said we will probably be very close by the time we do it, and we will probably have the money for it. So we'll probably be close enough to those warrants to put it in at that time. I don't know that for a fact yet, though. So I know this is recorded, so I'm gonna put my disclaimer on it. It may not happen, but it's likely going to happen.
Happen when? I'm sorry.
When the construction of when the bigger construction project, the one, when you're asking questions about the bigger project.
Yeah.
So there's 2 phases, just the bridges, and then there's gonna be the bigger project where we put the 3 lanes in. It would be done during that time. And we have cameras out there, portable cameras that we watch that a lot. We can see it from the cameras up the interstate, so we know sometimes it's not great.
Yeah.
So we understand that. But we just don't have a lot of ability to mess with it right now.
So, Christina, you mentioned that you guys can absorb this group without any issues making. So my question would be, and this is coming from a resident currently literally leaving, currently one of your customers about to go onto well water and close on a property that this would impact. So my question is, how many customers do you need to actually improve the water quality? As somebody who's counting water meters like a serial killer with not used at this point, having lived there for over a decade, yeah, when can we expect to see water quality?
So, okay, I want to make sure I understand your question. So you're saying, if we connect, are you asking about West Des Moines water, or are you asking about the water you currently have versus West Des Moines
I'm
water?
not on the other districts, I'm going to be on a well, so yeah, I was wondering, I mean, when West Des Moines can improve their water. I also grew up on the south side of Des Moines, so I know what it could be, as I'm just comparing, you know.
So this water, it's interesting you say that, because the water that would serve this area is water we purchased from Des Moines Water Works. So this area is served by water that we purchased from Des Moines Water Works, soon to be Central Iowa Water Works. And then, right now, we're studying about future plants, and one of the future plants that possibly could happen is a plant further west that would send water back into this area about 10 years out or so. So, and that's not yet determined, that's still under study. And so, West Des Moines, I know people say things about West Des Moines, so this is, AC Ward has deep wells, Jordan wells, and so it has a different palate to it than water that's treated from the surface water. So, so it's just different, and everybody has aesthetically thoughts or palate thoughts about it, but, I drink it every day. It doesn't, I like it, so. And I have plenty of people that say they like it, and some people that say it's a little harder. But I can tell you that the water that we're pushing out of AC Ward is softer than what's coming out of Fox Creek Benefited Water District. It's just the treatment, it's very hard, yeah. But it costs money to soften water. So when you think about the comparison, we're going to be softening water or purchasing water that's at a better quality that's basically the same price. So, does that answer your question?
I assume it still makes it, though, it's not gonna be just straight from the water works to that group.
No. So we purchase water and bring it into the system in various points within our system, okay? It's an agreement that we currently have in place with Des Moines Water Works. We purchase up to 8.97 million gallons per day. And when that ASR comes online, we're gonna put water down in the wintertime, we're gonna bring it up in the summer, you're gonna get ASR water. And that water is treated water that goes down and it comes back up, and we do a little bit and it goes back out and matches all of our water quality. We put out water at AC Ward that matches water quality with Des Moines Water Works. Does that help?
Question in the middle there too.
I just wanted to see clarification on, you said we can't get West Des Moines Water Works without being annexed. Is there a possibility we can get annexed, but that portion doesn't get approved, that's issued by water board and then?
Yeah, so it is, so just because you're annexed doesn't mean that you get West Des Moines water. There has to be an agreement between West Des Moines Water and the Fox Creek Benefited Water District, because they have the right to continue to serve. And so, they would have to be brought on board. I mean, I'm not sure, they have the right to continue to serve with the current system. So it's kind of a two-pronged thing that has to happen. And that's, we could have took it the prong on the water side first, but maybe the annexation side has to come first for the other water district. That will be up to the trustees. Yeah, so there's costs to actually connect to your system, right? And that was in that proposal, and we kind of had it delineated out, and there was a cost for hydrants that would be divided out amongst your subdivision. But generally, every customer that connects to West Des Moines Water, especially in the growth areas, pays a connection fee district fee, much like sewer. It's about $3,400. It goes up every July. We adjust it based on the cost index. Because it's the same thing as sanitary. It pays for all those trunk sewers, like there's a 16-inch trunk sewer, water main along Mills, it pays for those big water mains. So $3,400 per acre. As I mentioned, what the board has approved in the past, when we have people that come in with multiple acres, they allow you to pay 1 acre and defer the rest. So as long as you don't subdivide your parcel, you wouldn't be on the hook for anything more than the $3,400 per acre. And then you pay a connection fee, based on your meter size. Most typical household meters, 5/8, it's $700, I think it's $700. $700 or $770, but right in there. And when we made the proposal to Fox Creek Benefited Water District, it was almost a net zero with all their customers if we did the connection fees and that $700 fee with the balance that was in the bank. So you could kind of offset that for everybody for that connection fee. Now, that's just a proposal. Again, that's something that the trustees would have to decide how they want to handle the balance in the bank. So we thought it was maybe a fair way to address all the customers.
So that's just a one-time fee, or is it?
It is a one-time fee. And then you just pay your rate. Yeah. So, we typically do our CIP planning, in August, September, and the board approves it November, December. And so I've left that money in there, but if you guys aren't gonna move forward, I'll move that to other projects that need to be done. So, I mentioned, there's about 1.4, and that's probably dated about a year. It's not like recent cost estimates. It feels like cost estimates are changing so rapidly. We're all very cautious about that. $1.4 million between the city and us that we're gonna help pay for those, connections, for the Fox Creek Benefited Water District to get things hooked up.
So that, if I understand it correctly, the multiple acres fee that would be assessed on this, per acre, would be waived Fox Creek, Benefited Water District customers, not those outside of the correct? So they being serviced, if they own 7 acres, they would charge, would they own charge that?
Typically, when we have a residential area that's on well that comes in, good question, and then I didn't maybe quite understand that. What we typically done is the same thing. So you pay up 1 acre, and then it's deferred. The remaining acres are deferred until you subdivide it, and then we would assess the other $3,400 per acre, whatever the fee is at the time that you subdivide. So it would be treated similarly.
So if you talk about sewer and water and all of that happens, there's roughly $65,000, is that billed day one?
So again, the agreement has to happen kind of 3 ways between the benefited water districts.
I guess the question is, when is it all due in the beginning, upfront, is it everybody?
When you connect.
When you connect. When you connect.
So write a check for, it all happens at the same time, right?
So I think that's a little misleading, because what we're saying, well, okay, well, let me share with you how I see it, okay? I think Brian has, said that you don't have to necessarily connect to sewer right away. You can continue to use your septic. But if you're going to move to West Des Moines Water, those fees would be due at the time of connection. And what I said is, I think that there may be a way to offset those with what's available in the Fox Creek Benefited Water District Bank. So,
The water side of it. The point I heard you making, clarify if I'm wrong, if we're within 200 feet of the trunk, we have to connect. So if you connect, is that not correct?
If your system fails, Dallas County has a rule that's 200 feet. We have a rule, the city, that's 400 feet. But I would recommend to the city council that that gets waived for Fox Creek if we make that decision. So that's the difference.
I just want to make sure, I understand what you're saying. You're trying to get big picture what we're talking about. I just want to make sure.
What's really more of a question is just when, what the payment requirement would be, and effectively, regardless of, it's just all around that time.
Yeah. And like I said, I hope that we can offset it. There is the hydrants, that has to be done so that fire can, and we would divide that, we could figure out or negotiate a plan where we divide that out and assess that minor cost per month. We did that with Pheasant Ridge to spread it out, not to say, a huge bill right right at the get-go. We're pretty reasonable people, we try to be. Yeah.
So for that, you had majority of the hydrants were in a completely different HOA, so would they be paying the bulk of the remaining if it gets to the balance to that charge?
Okay, so
So like, Napa has, what, 33 hydrants?
that's what we estimated they need to put in,
Their price was 495,000, I think,
and their HOA is responsible for that.
so they would have, so we wouldn't have to like subdivide the remaining portion if we put Fox Creek benefit balance to that charge, right? So it seems like there's like a $300,000.
So we're trying to be, I guess you can try, I guess you could ask the district to apply it different ways. I think everybody has to pay the connection fees and water supply fees, so that seemed to be a place where it could be evenly divided. There is a difference between the different subdivisions, and of course, some of you are not in a subdivision of what's needed. So Fox Creek is those, I think it's 3 or 4 hydrants. Sugar Creek Hills, their hydrants, I think we might just need to rethread them because they're actually functioning. So that'd be pretty minor. And then Napa has no hydrants, and so they would need to put those in, so. It seemed like to try, and we can do it different ways. This was just, well, we should make that subdivision pay for those hydrants, right? Because they have none, right? And if Sugar Creek, I'm sure when they paid those lots, they paid for those hydrants that are functioning still, and they shouldn't have to pay as much. And then Fox Creek, like I said, there's none working right now. Yeah. Blue? I don't-
I heard you say earlier, reality of it is that residential property taxes aren't really the driving factor of the annexation. So if the city of West Des Moines doesn't view the residential tax revenue as the driving factor, what's the interest? Why are you looking at Fox Creek? Fox Creek, there's no egress, right? You go into Fox Creek, it doesn't lead you anywhere. The only streets within Fox Creek. And I don't live within the development. I'm part of Fox Creek, but I'm one of the property owners on those.
I mean, to be perfectly frank, the impetus for, go ahead.
What's that?
No, go ahead. You were finishing up.
So just help me understand, what
The driver for us really is that we've got development interest on properties outside of Fox Creek, and we can't, if we left Fox Creek out in Dallas County, we've created an island, so we are physically unable to annex those other properties. And that's really the biggest driver, more so than it is any type of land grab for the subdivision or attempt to collect revenue from the Fox Creek area. It's really, we need this subdivision to come in so we can continue to grow further west, and our master plans call for how we would serve this area with utilities and infrastructure and road networks.
One example of that, the genesis of this was the southeast corner of Mills and Grand Prairie Parkway. A developer wanted to construct there, and he wanted city services, but we couldn't annex him in without getting Fox Creek. State law, that's the island, so kind of the donut hole that prevents us. So we have other property owners west that want to do the same thing. We want city services, we're ready to develop, but we can't because Fox Creek is gonna create that donut.
but quite frankly, that does, to me, would be I guess, the trigger or the incentive, because not just Fox Creek, the city is looking at it, and I think probably should be, but the picture is the revenue coming in from other development, and we can sit here and talk all day long about land use and property rights, but that's all subject to change too. I mean, it's been around a long time, and I've seen that the plans change and the usage change, and so, I don't want to sound cynical, but the more property the city acquires that becomes taxed by West Des Moines, as that land usage changes and zoning changes,
Yeah, and I wouldn't expect, you know, from your position, your plight as a proper, or our situation with wanting developable land probably doesn't register on your reasons as to why you should move forward with annexation, but, you know, I just say that we're trying to offer some concessions with the fiber conduit installation, covering the tab on that. The tax abatement increase, that's a concession to try to persuade support. You know, the sanitary sewer, I think, was a big unanswered question from last year. I think we're hearing some response on that now, that it doesn't fiscally make a whole lot of sense to spend all this money to put in sanitary sewer and not assess, but the connection fees into that are tremendous for the homeowners. So I think that hopefully we'd attempt to clarify that tonight, but I think the thing you probably need to think about long-term is this water situation that you're in. And I think that's the most compelling case that we could make, that if you ever want a more reliable water system, you're gonna have to annex into the city unless you're content with what you've got and you disagree with the numbers that Christine has presented tonight. No, there's no vote tonight that we're taking. Do you get a vote? Well, you can, if you sign your consent to annex in, basically, and that would give us the notice that you would agree to come in, and then what's that? Yeah, we can make those available to you. I mean, we don't have this, firm timeline in place where by October 1st, hypothetically, that we're trying to get all this annexed. This is gonna take time. Treat this as an ongoing step just to provide information. Obviously, we're doing a little bit of a sales job as to why we think there's some benefits to you, to come into the city. But this isn't something that would happen overnight. Right over here first, I think.
Yes, you said that there's some reason why you can't grant 10-year full tax abatement, but there are a lot of other scenarios just below that that you can. It seems like if you're asking us to pay $55,000 to $70,000 per homeowner, that there's even more concessions you can make on your payment. I don't think we're asking you to do that.
Yeah, I think there's a big misconception with some people about the sanitary sewer expense, and I think what Brian outlined are options. If we served everybody out here and put in new sanitary sewer, there's a cost to connect to it. What I think he's saying is that it's not reasonable, or the cost benefit to us as a city doesn't make a whole lot of sense to put that sanitary sewer in either. And so we are giving an option basically that would allow most folks within the subdivision to remain on their private waste or septic systems.
And then to do this collection system, we would need everybody in the subdivision to consent to it, essentially, or a lot of people to consent to it, and we would be tearing down trees like crazy.
But I think that.
I mean, and
the sales job is one of the, is if you're trying to convince us that this is, because ultimately, the reality to her question is it decide doing what it is, you're gonna take it to a referendum, let someone vote on it, you're gonna have to say anyway. So the best case scenario at this point is basically sliding scale tax payment and a fiber optic, and that's that. I mean, that's the option.
Well, a couple of things, and just back to the last person that had a question too. With tax abatement, what I'm saying is that we are proposing to give you the most lucrative schedule that state law allows, that 10-year sliding scale schedule. Under state code, that's the most that we can offer. We can do any combination under that amount, but we're not offering you under that amount. We're proposing the maximum benefit to you, basically. So, the other piece of this too, when you talk about, you know, the sales job aspect of it, I can't conclusively sit here and say that we're gonna do an involuntary annexation that involves a referendum. That is an option at our disposal, but at the moment, that's not something that we're really leaving on the table. If council feels strongly that they want this area in, our city council would have the wherewithal to vote on that option, but that's a longer drawn-out process that we ideally would not enjoy going through either. I think we'd rather take this 80-20 approach and try to garner support. Yeah, and I can't decide that as a staff person. That's council, but that is an option that's out there. I guess we're trying the diplomatic olive branch approach. And, you know, I think too, I mean, if this is something that is wholesale rejected, I mean, there's a scenario that I just want to outline because I think we're all being very frank and transparent here, where let's say that this doesn't happen. This is our offer that's on the table right now. Fox Creek Benefited Water District fails. You then need West Des Moines Water. These same offers might not be on the table some point in the future. So that's the enticement that we're trying to make right now to garner support.
I mean, I think we recognize this is change for you all, and, I know, that can be really hard, and these are big decisions to make. And we've tried to put together the best package that we can, to make that, for you to make that decision. And all of us want to be as fair as we possibly can, given the situation, and we'll have to figure out how to move forward. West of my waterworks, if we don't serve Fox Creek Benefited Water District, it's okay. I mean, we can move forward. But I wrote that letter because I think it's the right thing to do. And I'm here talking to you about it because I think it's the right thing to do. And I wish that, unfortunately, it comes with this annexation, constraint. And that's the Waterworks trustees' policy for a long time. And I asked him, would you consider changing it? And the answer is no. And so, it's the best that we can offer.
Gentleman in the back, did you have a question?
What percentage of Fox Creek and Sugar Creek homeowners do you need consent from to get to the 8% of the proposed 1340?
Well, so
Is
that,
everybody else consented? Do you need Fox Creek and Sugar Creek?
if everybody else that you saw on that map consented, all those large property owners, we could have 0 people from from the Fox Creek subdivision consent.
Fox Creek and Sugar Creek?
Yes. Yes, sir. Yep, ma'am.
So it would have to be either a use or a structure that when it was constructed or started, did not meet the current regulations in this county. That's how you wouldn't basically say you're not a legal, non-conforming use. So let's just say your neighbor put a bar in next door, and the county didn't allow that for zoning. If that came into the city, we would say, you're illegal, we're not gonna allow you to continue that use. Does that make sense? Is that answering your question? Well, so if the shed was built and the county didn't require a permit for that size of structure, then there's no issue. Now, if it's built and the county required a permit, in essence, what would happen is if you could demonstrate it was built according to code, even though you didn't get a permit, we can use that as saying it's a legal, non-conforming structure because you followed that law. You just didn't go through the paperwork.
Linda, would it be safe to say that there's not gonna be, like an army of, building inspectors going out to Fox Creek after they annex with clipboards, checking everybody's structures to make sure that they conform? That's not what we're gonna do.
No,
I mean, this is gonna be like, probably complaint driven.
Complaint driven, yeah. We are not interested in doing that in any form or fashion. And really, we're here to get compliance, but we're not here to punish. And so a lot of this is if someone comes in with a project, or if someone complains that a structure is unconforming or there's some other issue. Okay, I didn't catch the first part of that.
Yeah. Yes.
Yes.
We don't have enough people to do stuff like that.
No.
Any other questions?
Yes, so, and this is more about, emergency service response. The city does not want a discontinuation of naming on the street, and they wanna make sure that street names are not, duplicated within the city. So when I talk about whether being readdressed or that, one of the things we look at is this repeated someplace else in the city? And then is this consistent with our numbering system as we move west or north or south? So chances are some will have to be readdressed. But we've not done any kind of analysis to say, this area is changing, this area can stay as is.
Thanks for your information. Appreciate it.
Thank you for attending, everyone. So.
Consider it on well.
Uh-huh.
I didn't know if everybody else had that question, so I didn't want to make everybody listen to me.
I brought the
Our
engineering
house is on
part,
Mill Street.
brought the engineering part.
I'm not even sure I could read that and understand it.
I know, but that's why you get stressed.
But obviously, like, someday that's the
In
problem.
my
It's not me,
opinion,
I'm
in my opinion, it's gonna be annexed,
At the
you
time
might
of
as well get something
annexation, I
out
had
of it.
that force, for at least we got.
In the long run, it will be annexed. Might as well get something out of it.
I can tell you my board is super tired, like, I went to them saying, I think this is the right thing to do, and we should make an offer, and they're like,
Or basically,
Yeah.
being overdone.
Well, we'll get my vote if they say, let's do it. I might even get on that consent.
And so.
Well, I think we're
Listen to them out. Thank you.
Now, I don't know.
Yeah, for goodness sake, give it to me.
But if Dallas County was different, there was more horses per acre, then what would happen is that use would have to be in existence at the time of annexation.
So I would have to have.
You would have to, if
Throw some horses out there.
that's a better deal in Dallas County, you would have to have that